All good? Ready to go? Great. Okay, no worries. Well, Clavicular, thanks for chatting to me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
What do I call you? That's my first question.
You could go with Clav.
Do you go by Braden anymore?
Haven't heard that one in a while.
Why not?
I would just say that I kind of like to keep my personal identity a little bit, not necessarily private, because pretty much all my information is doxed out there. But it's sort of a new era in my life with all of the content I'm doing, so it doesn't even really feel like when I hear that name anymore that it resonates almost in a way.
It's interesting.
There's a moment in every story like this where what started as a spectacle stops being entertainment and starts being a criminal case file. For a 20-year-old who built his entire brand on the idea of being optimized, superior, and untouchable, that moment arrived on March 26th, 2026. And unlike most things in this story, it was not on camera. Well, actually, most of the evidence, he filmed it himself. Let's establish the foundation here, because context is everything in a story like this. Braden Peters, known online as Clavicular, is a 20-year-old content creator who rose to significant prominence over a 6-month period by producing content around what he calls looks optimization. And I want to be precise about what that means, because it is not the standard fitness and skincare content you might expect. His documented content includes discussions of anabolic steroids, elective jaw surgery, a technique that involves striking the skull with a hammer under the premise of bone remodeling, and a pharmaceutical stack that multiple medical professionals have publicly flagged as clinically dangerous. Now, the financial side of this matters, because it explains the incentive structure. At his peak, Clavicular was reportedly generating $20,000 per day from his live streaming alone, primarily through his 30-day marathon stream on the platform Kick. That number tells you something important. The chaos wasn't accidental. The chaos was the product. He built an audience that rewarded escalation. And so, he escalated. Every controversy brought more viewers. Every ban brought more press. For approximately 6 months, consequences belonged to someone else. That is no longer the case. Before we get to the March arrests, and we will get there in detail, I want to walk you through the documented behavioral timeline leading up to them. Because what happened in late March did not come from nowhere. Christmas Eve, 2025. Clavicular live streamed himself driving his Tesla Cybertruck over a man who had jumped onto the vehicle's hood. His team framed it publicly as self-defense, describing the individual as an armed stalker. The circumstances were ambiguous enough that no arrest came from that incident. But here is what did happen after. Rather than silence, rather than any expression of concern, Clavicular posted an AI-generated image of himself with a caption about winning stupid prizes, and explicitly stated he hoped the person had been killed. That is not self-defense messaging. That is someone who has genuinely internalized the idea that nothing applies to them. February 2026, Arizona. He is arrested on a fake identification charge attempting to enter a nightclub. That case was dropped 11 days later due to, in the court's own assessment, a low likelihood of conviction. For his audience, and critically, for him, this likely registered as confirmation. As further evidence that the system simply would not hold him accountable. And so we arrive at what happened next. February 2nd, 2026. During one of his extended live streams, broadcast to thousands of concurrent viewers, a physical altercation takes place at an Airbnb in Osceola County, Florida. The individuals involved are Clavicular's girlfriend, identified publicly as Violet, and another female content creator known as Jenny Pop. What made this legally significant was not simply that a fight occurred. Physical altercations happen. What made this a criminal matter was what Clavicular allegedly did during it. According to investigators, rather than de-escalating the situation, he participated in it. Specifically, he is accused of helping to physically restrain Jenny Pop while his girlfriend continued the assault. And his camera crew, which he personally directs, walked the perimeter of the altercation, filming the entire sequence from multiple angles, in real time, for a paying subscriber audience. From a prosecutorial standpoint, this is a remarkably clean case to build. The defendant personally produced, distributed, and monetized the evidence of his alleged crime in 4K, with multiple camera operators. The charges that followed from this incident, misdemeanor battery and conspiracy to commit battery, under an Osceola County warrant. His girlfriend Violet faces the same charges. As of the time this video was produced, she has not been arrested. Now, if the Kissimmee incident was the charge that got him arrested, what happened in the Everglades on March 26 is what turned this from a local story into a state-level incident. On the same day Fort Lauderdale Police processed him on the Osceola County warrant, a separate clip went viral across social media platforms. The clip showed Clavicular live streaming from an airboat in the Florida Everglades, alongside a figure known publicly as Cuban Tarzan. In the clip, they encounter what appears to be a deceased alligator floating in the water, and Clavicular proceeds to fire his weapon into it repeatedly. Now let me walk through the specific legal exposure here, because this is where the stakes escalate significantly beyond misdemeanor territory. First, the firearm discharge. Florida law explicitly prohibits discharging a firearm from a vehicle within 1,000 feet of any person. There were 3 other individuals on that airboat at the time. That is a second-degree felony under Florida statute, carrying a potential sentence of up to 15 years. Second, the drone. The clip also shows Clavicular and Cuban Tarzan firing at a drone hovering above the waterway, which they claimed was conducting surveillance on them. Discharging a firearm at an aircraft, including unmanned aerial vehicles, carries its own set of federal aviation violations. Third, the alligator itself. This is the detail that many people glossed over in the initial coverage. Alligators in Florida carry both state and federal protections, and those protections apply even after the animal's death. The defense of "it was already dead when we found it" does not cleanly apply under Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission guidelines. The response from Florida's government was swift and public. Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins released an official statement, noting that Florida's wildlife and waterways deserve respect, not content farming. When the lieutenant governor of a state has to personally address the airboat decisions of a 20-year-old streamer, we have left the territory of internet drama. This is governmental accountability on a formal record. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission launched a formal investigation. As of recording, no alligator-specific charges have been officially filed, but both the FWC and the lieutenant governor's office have indicated that accountability is coming. Within hours of the Everglades clip spreading, Kick terminated his stream. This ended the 30-day marathon broadcast that had been generating approximately $20,000 per day. I want to put that in context. Kick, as a platform, has historically maintained a more permissive content policy than its competitors. It has allowed content that other major platforms would not. That is not a criticism, it is simply its documented approach. When that specific platform looked at the Everglades footage and made the decision to terminate, that is a meaningful signal, not because platform bans carry legal weight. They don't. But because it reflects the severity of what was captured on that stream, as assessed by a platform that had, until that point, been willing to host his content without restriction. The financial impact is real. The 30-day stream does not resume. The subscriber momentum does not simply transfer. And this comes at precisely the moment when legal fees, for what may become multiple felony-level proceedings, begin to accumulate. There is a layer to this story that consistently gets omitted from the viral coverage, and I think it is actually the most important context for understanding why the behavioral pattern looks the way it does. Multiple specialists who have publicly analyzed Clavicular's content have flagged his documented pharmaceutical stack as clinically alarming. He has discussed, on camera, to his audience, combining a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, commonly referred to as an MAO inhibitor, with amphetamine-based stimulants and trenbolone, simultaneously. He has also discussed taking cardiac medication alongside this combination to manage the tachycardia that the stack produces. Let me explain what the clinical data says about this, because this is not speculation. This is documented pharmacology. MAO inhibitors in combination with amphetamines is not a gray area medically. It directly impacts impulse control. The documented outcomes associated with this specific combination include compulsive behavior, dissociative decision-making, and disproportionate risk-taking. These are findings from controlled medical research. Now layer onto that the fact that Braden Peters is 20 years old. The human brain, by current neurological consensus, completes its primary development around age 25. The prefrontal cortex, the region governing consequences, long-term planning, and impulse regulation, is literally still under construction at 20. Stacking the neurologically aggressive compounds he has described onto a brain that has not finished developing, and then broadcasting every result to a large audience of younger males who are interpreting those results as aspirational. That is the part of this story that isn't funny. That is the part that warrants genuine concern, not just for him, but for the subset of his audience that is taking notes. After his bond was set at $1,000 and he was released from Broward County Jail, the first documented action by his team was to have him photographed holding small animals. I am reporting that accurately. He exited the building with press present, delivered a single line to reporters about being tired, and within the same afternoon was photographed in what can only be described as a deliberate image rehabilitation effort, soft animals, no accountability, no statement addressing any of the specific allegations. And this is consistent. Every single controversy in this documented timeline follows the same response architecture. Film it. Post it. Act untouchable. Treat consequences as something that applies to other people. It worked for a while. Charges dropped. Bans reversed. News cycles moved on within 48 hours. But here is the structural problem with that strategy when applied to felony-level legal proceedings. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission does not follow his streaming analytics. The Osceola County Court does not refresh his subscriber count. A second-degree felony statute does not contain an exemption clause for content creators. The legal system operates on its own timeline. And that timeline is just beginning. So where does this actually go from here? The battery and conspiracy charges from Osceola County are misdemeanor level, but they are on the record. They establish a documented pattern that prosecutors in any subsequent case will be able to reference. The Everglades incident carries felony-level exposure under multiple statutes, firearm discharge from a vehicle, federal drone airspace violations, and potential wildlife protection violations. The FWC investigation is active. The lieutenant governor has made a public statement. This does not quietly disappear. He is 20 years old, with a documented behavioral escalation pattern, and neurologically compromised decision-making framework by his own public admission, and a legal strategy that has historically relied on either dropped charges or short public attention spans. That strategy has a ceiling. And based on the current trajectory, he is approaching it. The irony at the center of all of this is complete. A young man who built his identity around being optimized and superior has created the most thorough, time-stamped, self-produced evidence record I have seen from any content creator facing legal scrutiny. Every charge. Every incident. Every decision. Filmed. Posted. Monetized. And now entered into the public record. This story is still developing. The FWC investigation is ongoing. The Osceola County case has not concluded. And if the pattern holds, there will likely be more to report. If you want to follow this as it progresses, subscribe. I'll be covering the legal outcomes as they become public. And I want to hear from you. Do you think the legal system will actually hold him accountable this time, or does the pattern continue? Drop your take in the comments.